Hey everyone, this is a short obituary for Zheng Chaolin, which is my best guess at how to pronounce that properly, by Wang Fanxi, also my best guess at pronouncing that name. In memory of a Chinese revolutionary, Zheng Chaolin, 1901 to 1998. Zheng Chaolin, a veteran of the Chinese Communist Party and of the Chinese Trotskyist movement, died on August 1st of 1998 in Shanghai. He devoted his entire life to the cause of the liberation of the Chinese workers and peasants, and yet his achievement was far from restricted to the revolution. Zheng was extremely versatile. Zheng's talents were numerous and many-sided. Zheng was at once a writer, a poet, a historian, a linguist, and a translator. Zheng's achievements were not only numerous but exemplary. In all respects, Zheng avoided a superficial approach and probed deeply into the essence of things, assiduously perfecting his skills and knowledge. Naturally, Zheng was first and foremost a faithful and unyielding revolutionary. Zheng's efforts and achievements in other fields took as their keynote Zheng's revolutionary thinking and were imbued with Zheng's revolutionary spirit. Therefore, I shall restrict myself in this obituary to writing a brief introduction to Zheng's life as a revolutionary. Zheng Chaolin was born in Jiangping in Fujian province. I don't know how to say that. I think it's Fujian. That's my guess for this. Province in 1901, and as a boy received a traditional Chinese education. In 1919, Zheng Chaolin went to France as part of the, quote, work-study program, under which young Chinese students financed their studies by working part-time in French industry, and came under the influence of Western thought, particularly the Russian Revolution. As a result, Zheng gradually abandoned his attachment to the philosophy of Confucius and Mencius, and even of Lao Tzu. I'm not sure how to say that. Lao. I'm not sure how to pronounce Z's again on their own. And Zhuangzi, and embraced the ideas propagated by Chen Dushou, who would go on to become like the founder of the Chinese Communist Party. I know that, and be leader of its left opposition. And embraced the ideas of Chen Dushou and his co-thinkers who advocated democracy and science. Shortly afterwards, he embraced Marxism and very soon progressed from thought to action. In June 1922, when some young Chinese Marxists living in Europe held a meeting in Paris at which they set up the, quote, Youth Communist Party, Zheng Chaolin was among the 18 delegates, who included Zhou Enlai, Zhao Xiyan, and Yin Quan. In 1923, Zheng was selected to go to Russia to study at Moscow University for the Toilers of the East. In July 1924, when the Communist Party of China urgently needed cadres as a result of the rapid development of the revolutionary situation in China, Zheng Chaolin was sent back to China together with Chen Yanyan and others. Zheng worked in the propaganda department of the Central Committee, edited party journals, drafted internal educational materials and external propaganda materials, and translated Bukharin's book, ABC of Communism, while at the same time teaching at the party school, i.e. Shanghai University. From 1925 to 1927, when the Chinese Revolution grew apace, Zheng participated in the famous May 30th movement and in the second and third Shanghai Workers' Risings. After Chiang Kai-shek's bloody coup of April 12, 1927, Zheng went with the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China to Wuhan, where Zheng took part in the party's 5th Congress. After the Congress, Zheng was appointed head of propaganda department of the Hubei Provincial Committee. After the final defeat of the revolution, Zheng took part in the party's famous August 7th conference, and soon afterwards secretly moved back to Shanghai with the new Central Committee and took charge of the new party organ, Bolshevik, as its chief editor. In 1928, Zheng went to Fujian to reorganize party affairs in the province. In 1929, Zheng married comrade Liu Jingzhen. Not long afterwards, he was arrested for the first time by the Kuomintang. Fortunately, Zheng's identity was not discovered, and after just 40 days, he was freed from prison as a result of the secret intervention of the party. New section, turning to Trotskyism. Between 1929 and 1930, Zheng began to come into contact with Leon Trotsky's writings on the Chinese Revolution. Deeply impressed, Zheng turned towards Trotskyism together with Chen Dushou and over 80 veteran party members. In May 1931, Zheng, Chen Dushou, and 3 other comrades represented the proletariat group at the Unification Conference of the 4 Trotskyist groups. He was elected to the Central Committee of the new Trotskyist organization and took charge of its propaganda department. Not long afterwards, Zheng was arrested by the Kuomintang authorities and sentenced to 15 years in prison, though he was freed after just 7 years when the Japanese War broke out. After Zheng's release from prison, Zheng rested and recuperated for a while in a village in Anhui province together with his wife, and proofread and translated the remaining part of Trotsky's The Revolution Betrayed, 1/3 of which had already been translated by 2 other Trotskyists in Nanjing prison. In 1940, Zheng returned to Shanghai, where Zheng joined the leadership of the Chinese Trotskyist organization and the editorial board of its underground paper, Struggle. At the same time, he translated volumes 2 and 3 of Trotsky's History of the Russian Revolution. After outbreak of a new world war in Western Europe in 1939, differences of opinion grew up in the Chinese Trotskyist leadership, principally in regard to what attitude to adopt to the Chinese resistance once the anti-Japanese war in China became caught up in the wider war. A protracted dispute ensued and spread from political to organizational split in 1942. Chaolin was the leading member of the group later known as the International Workers' Party of China. This group argued that the Kuomintang's struggle against Japan had become subordinated to the Kuomintang's partnership with U.S. imperialism. See Gregor Benton's book, China's Urban Revolutionaries. New section, Occupation and War. On the 7th of December 1941, the Japanese army occupied Shanghai's foreign settlements, and revolutionary activity directed against the Japanese became extremely difficult. From then until the Japanese defeat in August 1945, Chaolin put his main effort into writing. Apart from editing Internationalist, the newspaper Internationalist, the underground Trotskyist journal, Zheng wrote his memoirs and the book Three Travelers, a collection of political debates in the form of the imaginary dialogues. Zheng also wrote The ABC of Permanent Revolution and a critical biography of Chen Dushou, uncompleted. To earn a living, he also translated some literary works, among them Ignacio Silon's Fontamara and a book by André Gide. From August 1945 to May 1949, from the Japanese surrender in the Civil War between the Kuomintang and the Communist Party of China through to the Communist victory in China, Zheng wrote numerous articles for the journal New Banner, or a publicly declared Trotskyist biweekly, which was banned by the Kuomintang government after 21 issues. On the eve of the communist occupation of Shanghai, the group to which he belonged reorganized as the International Workers' Party, which he helped lead. In the meantime, Chaolin systematically researched the social nature of the new China and wrote a pamphlet on the subject titled On State Capitalism. New section, Decades in Mao's Prisons. In the next 2 to 3 years, the IWP continued its activities under communist rule and extended its influence. As a result, on the 22nd of December 1952, its entire membership, together with all the other Chinese Trotskyists and even sympathizers, were netted up by the Maoist political police. This development had naturally been foreseen. As a precaution, the other Trotskyist organization under Peng Shuji has already transferred its leadership to Hong Kong. I mean, it should be already transferred its leadership to Hong Kong. The group to which Zheng Chaolin belonged also decided to send someone to set up a liaison station in Hong Kong. Chaolin himself, however, refused to go and insisted on staying behind in Shanghai, although he was fully aware of the great danger that he faced there. His St. Peter-like spirit of self-sacrifice led him not to a martyr's grave, but to a further 27 years in prison, including physical and spiritual abuse. In June 1929, as a result of changes in the leadership of the Communist Party of China, and in response to calls by people both inside and outside China, in 1929 he was declared a prisoner of conscience by Amnesty International. Chaolin and 11 other Trotskyist survivors of Mao's prisons were restored to liberty. In all, Chaolin spent a total of 34 years behind bars under first the Kuomintang and then the Communist Party of China, thus equaling the record for political imprisonment set by the 19th century French revolutionary Louis-Auguste Blanqui. In the 19 years between his release in 1979 and his death in August 1998, Chaolin suffered from poor health as a result of his long years in prison, but he refused to live the sort of life that most retired people live and put enormous effort into reflecting or writing about events in the world around him. In those years, Zheng Chaolin achieved three main things. First, Zheng helped various historians write true accounts of the Chinese Revolution and the Communist Party of China, including Chinese Trotskyism, to correct distortions made consciously or unconsciously by official historians, and in particular to refute past slanders and distortions directed by the Communist Party of China against Chen Dushou. Secondly, Zheng reflected independently and systematically on fundamental questions in the Chinese and the world revolution, and put the process and outcome of those reflections into writing in his long essay titled Cadreism. Thirdly, Zheng repeatedly demanded of successive Congress of the Communist Party of China that they rehabilitate the Chinese Trotskyists, formally declare Trotskyists in China and throughout the world not to be counter-revolutionaries, and admit that the past suppression of the Chinese Trotskyists had been wrong. Zheng recorded his efforts in these three regards in writings of more than 1 million Chinese characters. Unfortunately, so far it has been possible to publish only a small part of them, even though Chaolin enjoyed a personal freedom after 1979 and was even named a member of the Shanghai Municipal Political Consultative Committee. Zheng continued to be labeled a, quote, counter-revolutionary and to suffer discrimination. In recent years, Zheng Chaolin's memoirs were twice allowed to be published, quote, internally, i.e. for a restricted readership, and his translation of D. Merezhkovsky's book, Resurrection of the Gods, was republished, but none of his main works dealing with ideological and political questions, whether written in prison or after his release, have received permission to be published. Because Zheng all along resolutely maintained his opposition to Stalinism and Maoism, Zheng has continued to be viewed as a, quote, counter-revolutionary. Of his main writings, only his memoirs have appeared in English in a volume titled An Oppositionist for Life, Memoirs of the Chinese Revolutionary Zheng Chaolin, published in the USA in 1996 by Humanities Press. Zheng Chaolin's memoirs were also published in German in 1991 by the ISP Verlag Frankfurt in a translation by Rudolf Segal under the title 70 Jahr Rebell, in Erinnerungen eines chinesischen Revolutionärs. From these writings, foreign friends can get some idea of the life of this remarkable Chinese Marxist Trotskyist. Chaolin's wife, Liu Jingzhen, died less than half a year after her and Chaolin's release from a labor camp in June 1979. Their son, Fry, born in 1938, died in 1945. In his final years, Chaolin was cared for by his great niece. And this was published in Against the Current in 1998. Thank you so much for listening.